I am Dr. Carla Lupi, the Associate Dean for Faculty. I'd like to start this presentation by congratulating you on getting this far. Because if you're watching, and this is for you, then three things are true. First, you are a member of our full-time or part-time paid faculty. Second, you've been building a career that both draws on your passions and skills and contributes to HWCOM's missions all at the same time. And finally, you're ready to apply for the promotion that recognizes and rewards your very hard work. This presentation is best viewed in the year before you go up for promotion. We're hoping it will help demystify a process that many faculty find complex and sometimes confusing. Also, and more importantly, that it will help you plan to efficiently fulfill your own responsibilities in this process correctly and completely. The presentation is divided into 4 parts. First, the roles of department committees and chairs in your promotions process. Secondly, finding resources, that is the forms and lists that you'll need to complete and keep track of. Third, we'll be talking very clearly about your responsibilities and the recommended due dates for completing your promotions file. Fourth, we'll talk about HWCOM's and larger FIU's responsibilities to you in the promotions process. And finally, a few words about the new databasing system, Panther 180. We want to emphasize that the information in this presentation applies only to faculty who are paid directly by FIU, both full-time and part-time. A separate presentation specifically for voluntary and community-based faculty should be posted to the Faculty Tools website no later than January of 2018. We also want to point out that there is another presentation on our website that covers the 2 important elements of a promotions file that require attention every year from every faculty member from the beginning of their time on faculty. That means not just beginning the year before you're going up for promotion. Those 2 elements are your CV and your annual reviews. We encourage you to view that presentation first if you've never seen it. So our first topic is the foundational roles of the department you belong to and your department chair in your promotions process. To put these roles in perspective, we're going to show you this page that we'll return to frequently in this presentation, the all-important promotions timeline. It starts with candidate preparation the year before and culminates with notice from the provost's office more than 12 months later. Along the way, you, committees within your department, your chair, the HWCOM Appointments, Promotion, and Tenure Committee, the Executive Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, the Dean, and finally, of course, the FIU Provost's Office have significant responsibilities to fulfill. That said, there is a bottom line in the promotions process here at the Herbert Wertheim College of Medicine. You need to start with your department, specifically from a departmental committee and/or your departmental chair. As we outlined in the presentation Promotions 101, this support should ideally be built up over years as you engage in the annual review process with your chair or division director. At every review, you should be making known to your chair and your department your level of interest in going up for promotion one day. And your department should be providing you with guidance on your progress toward promotion and what remains for you to do to get ready. At a minimum, you should be discussing promotion during your annual review in the year before you plan to go up. In some departments, there will be a standing committee charged to periodically go over annual review information for all faculty in that department to determine which faculty are potential candidates for the upcoming year. And those committees should then reach out to appropriate candidates to encourage them to apply. Please note that at this point in the process, this departmental committee is not definitely recommending promotion. Rather, the committee is simply identifying potential candidates. So you can see why it is so important to make sure to address your intentions for promotion in your annual reviews. For faculty in departments that do not have a standing committee to do this, then the process will start with your chair's support. The bottom line is that by February of the year you plan to apply, you should have the concurrence of your department and your chair. Now let's move on to some of the nuts and bolts. We are working diligently to keep the website up to date with documents that will be either necessary or at least helpful to you along the way of your promotions process. All standard forms, lists, and the timelines for the promotions process are available through the Faculty Tools section of the HWCOM website. Links to downloads can be found in two places. The first is on the Faculty Tools homepage under Downloads to Bylaws, Handbooks, Forms, and Policies. The second is here on the actual tenure and non-tenure promotion page, which can be accessed through the tab Personal, Organizational, and Professional Development on the Faculty Tools page. This will be changing in appearance over the next few months as we update it with recordings like this one and other information. But it will be here, and we invite you to look for all standard materials here first. If you don't find something you're looking for, please contact us, specifically email Mr. Jonathan Sussman, so that we can first help you, and secondly, get the missing materials on this page for future users. So now let's talk about where the bulk of your work will be, assembling your promotions file. Once you have your chair's approval, it's time to begin finalizing key portions of your promotions file. If you've been keeping up your CV and collecting evidence, as we advised in Promotions 101, then most of your work will be in writing some important but relatively short statements that we'll say more about in a minute. You should also now think of 3 individuals who could be asked to write letters of reference. You will be giving those names to your chair within the next month or so. There is actually not too much, fortunately, that you will need to write, but you must have each and every one of these statements completed and completed correctly to proceed in the promotions process. They are, 1, a biographical summary, which should be no more than 2 to 3 paragraphs and written in the third person. 2, a statement of teaching philosophy, which can be written in first person, no more than 2 pages. 3, a statement of research and creative work following the same guidelines as the teaching philosophy. And 4th, the statement of service, same guidelines as the other 2. If you've never written these types of statements, deciding what to say and getting started might feel challenging. If you might find examples of those written by others somewhat helpful, contact the Associate Director of Faculty Affairs and Special Projects, currently Mr. Jonathan Sussman, and ask for examples that he has collected from faculty who are comparable to yourself in track and rank. So once you have those statements written, you'll add your updated CV and get these to your chair along with the names of potential writers of letters of reference. It's important to get this done as soon as possible, ideally within a month of getting confirmation of support from your department. That way your chair can promptly send your CV and statements to the potential writers with, of course, the request for the letter with plenty of time. It's important to give writers at least 2 to 3 months from the time of the request to get the letters back to your chair. Why? Because they need time to review your materials and the HWCOM promotions criteria and synthesize all of this into, of course, a strong letter. Your department will need time also to send reminders to those writers, and there are always some who weren't able to respond quickly. And even occasionally, they'll need time to identify another writer if one of the initial that you proposed are unable to write the letter. Next, let's talk about who makes for a good writer of a letter of reference. To answer this question, keep in mind that they must be able to conclude in their letter that, in their opinion, your work meets HWCOM criteria for the promotion you are seeking. This is why they will receive from your chair not only your CV and your statements, but also those HWCOM criteria for your track. Writing a good letter to support a promotion generally takes a couple of hours or more at a minimum. That's why it's so important to get the names of those potential letter writers to your chair early in the year to give them time to receive those necessary materials and then to write the letter. So who should you think about for possible letter writers? First and foremost are the 2 criteria underlined and in bold. These are the requirements written into the bylaws. They must be in your area of clinical or scientific discipline, expertise, and they must be at or above the rank to which you are applying for promotion. So if you're applying to the associate level, for instance, then the writer must be an associate or a full professor. If you are applying to the full professor level, then all of the writers must be full professors. It's also helpful if they already know your work well. This will speed the process of them putting the letter together and often position them to make even more meaningful comments about the impact of your work. And if you are moving from associate to full professor, the writer must be able to speak to your national and/or international reputation, as this is a key requirement for promotion to full professor. Obviously, this case can most clearly be made by writers at institutions other than FIU who are nationally active in your field of scholarship, service, and/or education. So now that you've written the statements and sent those to your chair with the names of the possible letter writers, with, of course, your CV and your biographical summary, and while your department is waiting on the letters, it's time for you to start working on finalizing your evidence. Evidence, specifically evidence of the quality of your work, is the most challenging part of the file for many faculty, especially if you haven't given too much thought to this before. We did discuss it in Promotions 101 to encourage new faculty to be thinking of it from the beginning and all along the way, and we'll go over it again now. In thinking about evidence, you might find this concept useful, one we introduced in the Promotions 101 presentation, and that is the importance of impact. To put it simply, how much of a difference has your work made? It can make a difference in contributing to HWCOM missions here at home, or perhaps in advancing the work of local, regional, national, or even international groups and organizations that deal with your fields of interest. It can make a difference, make an impact in filling important gaps in scholarship and theory, or in the careers of your colleagues and learners. Impact is really the product of the quality and the quantity of your professional work. Your CV, if it's complete, should do a pretty good job on this side with the quantity. But ultimately, there are two key parts of your promotions file when it comes to quality. One is the letters of reference we've talked about already, and the second is your evidence section. These are really what the reviewers of your file at every step of the promotions process look at to come to some estimate of the impact of your work. So what might evidence consist of? First, we want to make the point that the bulk of your evidence should deal with work you've done while at FIU and should focus on what you've done since your last promotion. This is what's most important in making the case to the people who review your file. That said, it might occasionally be appropriate to provide evidence of the quality of your work before you came to FIU, particularly if it is outstanding. That said, there are three general categories of evidence. One is reviews and ratings. Two is artifacts, and three are publicity and testimonials. Let's talk about each one. So let's go to reviews and ratings. This includes all systematically collected data about the quality of anything you do or produce. These could be comments from peer reviewers of submitted publications and grants, administrative reviews of courses you've directed, or peer and expert evaluations of your teaching or clinical work. Also included here are student ratings and commentary about your teaching. Note that the key feature of all of this, it is data that is generated systematically and using established criteria such as that found in evaluation forms. The second group is what I call artifacts. These are actual work products that someone with expertise in your area of interest, some of whom should be reviewing your file at one or more points in the promotions process, can review and come to their own judgment of the quality of your work. Possibilities include the first pages of publications, especially if you can accompany these with impact factors or altimetrics ratings. Another would be sample innovative teaching and or assessment materials you've developed, syllabi of courses you've directed, clinical protocols you've written, agency or organizational policy papers you've written or contributed to, perhaps patient education materials that you've authored, and finally, evidence of student learning in the form of test scores and other metrics. The last type of evidence comes in the form of what we might simply call publicity, like newsletter announcements, thank yous, and testimonials. The best of these not only give praise to your work, but provide detail on how and or why your work had an impact. For example, a colleague might say that you were an awesome support to them in their teaching or research career. But if they go on to describe a detail, a skill you taught them, an important problem you helped them solve, or how your assistance made it possible for them to write and publish an important paper or get a grant or opportunity they might not otherwise have had, these are real statements of impact. There can be some confusion about what makes for a letter of reference and what makes for a peer letter or testimonial. So this table summarizes the key points. Essentially, the three required letters of reference will come from people who have reviewed your statements, your CV, and the HWCOM criteria, and conclude that you meet the criteria for the promotion you are seeking. To do this, the writer will, of course, be looking over your entire career, and they will write these letters in response to a formal solicitation from your chair. A peer letter, on the other hand, does not require reference to promotions criteria and generally speaks not to your entire career, but to a smaller part or even a single element. And a peer letter is something that you request from the writer specifically for your promotions file. Or it might be something that you already had on file, perhaps again in the form of a thank you note or appreciation letter with a good amount of substantiating detail. Whether you already have it or you solicit it, you are the one to take this letter and include it with other evidence, which is where it belongs in your promotions file. If your career has been long and or highly productive, you might face the good problem of having too much evidence to choose from. If that's the case, then our resounding advice is absolutely to be judicious. Put yourself in the shoes of the many people who will be reviewing your file. They really don't need everything, especially if you've got so much. They need enough to make the case for your promotion. So first of all, try to align what you choose to best meet the criteria of your track. And don't simply repeat what's in your CV. Just pick the very best stuff. If you are going up on the Educator Scholar track and still haven't seen this publication from the AAMC, please check it out. It's linked on our promotions webpage and has some great examples of teaching statements and evidence that might help you think about what you should include in an Educator Scholar portfolio. So after assembling your evidence, it's time to sit back and wait. You've fulfilled your responsibilities within your own promotions process. So now let's move on to what you can expect from your department and then from the College of Medicine and larger FIU to complete your promotions process. Now that you've added your evidence to the statement you previously submitted to your chair and department, it's your chair's job to combine that with the letters of recommendation and the annual reviews that he or she has been keeping each year as part of your employment file at HWCOM. The chair should then convene a departmental committee that will do a detailed review of your entire file and make a yes-no decision about whether to recommend to your chair that you be promoted. Again, we want to point out that this departmental committee is actually making a decision based on your entire file. Unlike the departmental committee we brought up earlier in this presentation, the one that was simply identifying potential candidates and nothing more. If the departmental committee recommends promotion to the chair and the chair concurs, then the chair will recommend promotion to the HWCOM Appointment, Promotion, and Tenure Committee. A positive decision by that committee goes to the Executive Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and then to the Dean of the College of Medicine. The file and recommendation letters are then all sent to the Provost's office, typically no later than the end of November. The Provost's office issues its decisions around February, and promotions actually become effective the following August. So yes, it's a lengthy process, and fortunately for the majority of faculty who go through it, an ultimately successful one. We want you to know that HWCOM leadership wants to support all deserving faculty in getting their promotions. To that end, we realize that while this presentation provides helpful initial guidance, you got your own unique career, and presenting it and moving it through the promotions process and creating your promotions file will likely bring up some important specific questions. Fortunately, you can reach out at many levels for advice and guidance. Any of the individuals listed on this slide are knowledgeable about the process and committed to working with you. First, there's your chair and the departmental committees and departmental administrators. Secondly, in Central Faculty Affairs, your first contact should always be Mr. Jonathan Sussman, the Associate Director of Faculty Affairs and Special Projects. The Associate Dean for Faculty, Dr. Carla Lupi, and the Executive Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Dr. Carolyn Runowitz, are also continually available for consultation and advice, not only about the promotions process, but your overall academic career and progress here at the Herbert Wertheim College of Medicine. So after this rather lengthy presentation, we'd like to just hit a few take-home points. First, you need your department and your chair support to start, and hopefully you've been garnering this all along the way. Secondly, Do use the promotions section of the Faculty Tools website. It's what it's there for, and we're constantly updating it with new things that will hopefully make your life easier. Remember that there's a link to forms on the landing page of the Faculty Tools website, and this is where you can find forms as well as the promotions timeline. Of course, you'll need to write statements, assemble evidence, and identify potential letter writers. And as you're putting all of this together, remember and speak to the criteria of your track. Stick to and stay ahead of the schedule on the promotions timeline. That will give you extra wiggle room when unexpected events occur and stumbling blocks come in your way. And finally, there's lots of help available. Please never hesitate to use it and to use it as promptly as possible. Thank you and good luck.